This is Comic Shenanigans, episode of 1157, a conversation with Ron Frenz.
Ain't no stopping them shenanigans. Love getting into shenanigans. All up in them shenanigans. 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 Shenanigans.
Welcome to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. This is episode 1157. It's another conversation with Ron Frenz. Ron has been on the show most recently on episode 1136, but this is a new episode where we talk about a few things. We talk about his recent story in Savage Sword of Conan, working with Tom DeFalco, what it was like working on that project. But in particular, Robert E. Howard character that I'm guessing most people maybe don't know, but it was a very fun story to read. So we talk about that. We also talk about working on villains throughout his career, what it's like working on them, and a few specific villains in particular. So this was a lot of fun. I mean, it always is with Ron. This is his 20th appearance on the show. So there's a lot of back catalog if you want to enjoy more Ron Frenz. If you somehow haven't heard them already, you can go back to, so I'm going to rhyme off the episode, so I apologize in advance. We've got episodes 296, 408, 734, 744, 748, 776, 886, 920, 980, 1000, 1004, 1041, 1052, 1067, 1078, 1096, 1110, and 1125. So he's been on the show a lot. This is always a pleasure to be able to just sit and talk with him about his work and his career, different insights he can provide about different aspects of the business and how he has managed his career. So this was, again, a great deal of fun as always. So thank you for listening. You can always email me at the Comic Shenanigans comicshenanigans@gmail.com. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, listen to us on Spotify, and also subscribe to us on your various different podcast platforms. I really appreciate listening to the show, and providing feedback where possible is always great. Looking forward to the future. We have an interview with Daniel Dockery coming up soon about a new book about the Batman animated series. Really excited to talk about that. That's actually been on the books for a while. And then next week is something special. It's a kind of a crossover event with another podcast. I'll wait till next week to kind of tee it up properly, but very excited about doing something a little bit different. Still kind of hits the book of the month kind of vibe, but with someone new and someone new to this podcast, but known in podcasting circles. So that it was a lot of fun to do, and that's all I'll tee up for it for now. But again, thank you for listening to this episode, and let's jump right into the conversation with the amazing, the celebrated, the talented Ron Frenz. Enjoy. Ron, welcome back to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. How are you this fine evening?
Adam, it's a pleasure to join you as always, and thank you very much for asking once again. It's great to be here.
Hard to believe, but this is the 20th time that you've been on the program, which is it floors me to no end, because it's just a tremendous honor that you're willing to spend so much of your time talking with me about your career and all the amazing comics you've done over the years. So once again, thank you so much for coming on board.
I can't imagine why a broken down 66-year-old illustrator would enjoy talking to a young man who actually seems to appreciate the work and asks wonderful probing questions and makes me feel like I actually know what I'm doing. I can't even imagine why I might enjoy that.
Not at all. So this episode is going to come up in August, but the day that we're recording, it is the day that your story in Savage Sword of Conan number 15 comes out with the legendary Tom DeFalco as well as Pat Olive. So I'm very curious where this came from. When I first saw, you're going to be working on a story in Savage Sword, I was like, okay, here we go. We're, going back to Conan roots. And I find out, wait a minute, you're doing a Breckenridge Elkins story. I've never heard of this character before, so please tell me more.
Neither had I.
Neither had you?
Neither
okay.
had I. No, it was one of these things where the people at, I believe it's Titan Graphics or whatever it is, that are publishing Conan now, they've been interested in having Tom do work for them. They've been interested in having me do a cover or a pinup for the Color Conan comic for Savage Sword for a while now, and it's very flattering. But I think it's because I've always been considered somewhere in the John Buscema family, type of thing. I've done Conan. I did an old King Conan way back in the day. Mm-hmm. I've done some commissions of Conan, but I don't really have a lot to say about Conan. I enjoy the character. I loved the first movie. I read the Conan comic under Barry Smith. When John Buscema took it over, I was even more involved because I was a big Buscema fan. And I loved the monthly comic for years and years and years. But it's not a character that I ever really had a lot to say about or was dying to work on or something. I'm a superhero guy, I mean, I don't enjoy violence in portraying violence as much as I just enjoy portraying action, superhero action. So there's all kinds of different reasons that, plus the fact Titan found this Rob Delator kid, who is so fantastic. He should just be doing anything Conan ever again. He's amazing. He's amazing. He's obviously a student of Buscema, but my God, he's really very, very good. But anyway, so I would hate to do anything that would thus then be compared to what Rob Delator is producing for them. But they came up with a situation where they were just looking for an 8-page story for a backup in Savage Sword, and it could be anything Robert E. Howard. It didn't have to be Conan. And DeFalco is a huge Robert E. Howard fan and had just recently discovered Breckenridge Elkins. And there are a lot of these characters, a lot of these Robert E. Howard pulp characters, that some of whom, he did more Breckenridge Elkins stories than he ever did Conan stories.
Yeah.
And yet nobody's ever heard of the character, So Tom pitched this Breckenridge Elkins character, and I said, oh, okay. And I've come to trust DeFalco over the years, but I started doing some of my own research, and I looked him up on the internet and found, the little factoids about him and what the whole deal was with the character and stuff. And, and pretty quickly told Tom, I never really said I wasn't in, but I confirmed I'm in, and that's how this looks like fun. Tom pitched a story to them that they liked and sent me a plot, and I sat and did a bunch of ridiculous research about the type of geography that this character would be involved in, and other ways other illustrators have handled the character and who the character is and where the character comes from and blah, blah, blah. And all for a little 8-page story it's basically a tall tale. That's very much the spirit of it, the spirit of the character. And he's a mountain man. It's very much, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way, because I kept trying to find some other way into the character. Okay. But the character is Little Abner. The character is Little Abner is an adventure character. Or, if you were to cast the character, he should be played by Max Baer Jr., who played, help me, one, the Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro. Oh, yes, of course. He's Jethro Bodine as an adventure character, is really kind of who the character is. And I spent months trying to avoid that and trying to find some other direction into the character. But I kept coming back to that, to the point that I finally just embraced it, and we had some fun with it. And it's a neat little story, but it's basically an 8-page tall tale that is it's narrated first person by Breckenridge Elkins, and it's a fun little story. I've yet to see it with all the captions and dialogue added and everything. I've seen what Pat Olive did over my work. I wish he would have done more. It's one of those quirky things that can happen with pencilers and inkers, because, when I'm working with somebody like Pat Olive, I really would not mind and would kind of like it if he injected more of himself into the art, but he has some ridiculous idea that inkers shouldn't do that and should serve the pencils, and he does very, very well. But it's a little frustrating because I would have loved to have seen him improve me a little bit, that kind of thing. It's nuts. We're all crazy to one level or another.
So I have multiple questions about the story, but I want to go back just for a second. When you're talking about, the fact that you did do a King Conan back in the day, and that you don't feel like you really have an in on Conan as a character, and that, the first kind of interpretations you really remember seeing are obviously Buscema and Barry Windsor Smith. If you were to do a Conan story these days, and we know that in general you like to kind of go back to the essence of a character when you're kind of channeling and how to bring a character, to life, do you think you would end up naturally just doing more of a Windsor Smith thing or more of a Buscema thing?
I think it would. I would by default just be somewhere in the middle. I'd just be kind of doing myself, that kind of thing. Because I like Buscema's treatment better as far as the brutishness of the character, the wider nose, the way he stands, the way he moves. Because Robert E. Howard used to describe him as being pantherish, and. So I think I'd probably go with the heavier limbs and all that. But that's what I did for the King Conan story. I was very much just working off of what the model was from the early issues that were done by Buscema. So I really don't see myself straying too far from that, probably leaning more into that than the other, which is one of the reasons why doing it now and having it sit beside work by Rob Delatorre kind of makes me go, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to be judged next to what Rob is doing, because it's fantastic. It's really, really good.
It is.
Anyway.
So with your Breckenridge story, so I have multiple questions, and I don't think they're really spoilers per se, so I think we can talk fairly freely. But one artistic detail... Have you already seen it? I have it in front of me right now.
No kidding. You actually went out and bought it today or something, or what?
I did. I was at the store today, and my copy was waiting for me, and I was excited to be able to have it so we could chat today.
Well, God love you, sir. God love you. I appreciate that, Adam. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's funny. I do pick up the regular Conan, but I've actually never picked up the current Savage Sword because I was like, I don't know if I need it. And actually, it's funny reading it now. I picked it up because I wanted to see your story. But then reading the main story, I'm like, well, maybe I should be buying this regularly anyway. It's actually quite an entertaining package. But with your story...
Oh, I think Jim Zub does a nice job. Yeah, Jim Zub is a good Conan writer. I've enjoyed the stories I've seen.
Yeah, no, he's a fantastic. He really loves the material. You can tell how much passion he injects into it. Even Richard Starkings loves being the letterer on it. I've talked with him about, and I won't bore you with this, but I had a chance to talk with him, and we talked about, the art of lettering, and I don't know if I'd really understood it until Richard was really talking about, how much art and thought really goes into all of it, and really made me appreciate it more.
Absolutely.
And he was talking about, working on Conan, and how he was trying to channel the original kind of lettering interpretation in certain colors he would add on the narrative boxes that maybe aren't modern style, but they're the classic Conan style, and they kind of work well. That whole team has done an amazing job.
Yeah, and that kind of enthusiasm for the character, I have always believed comes through on the page for the audience. So I completely agree with you.
So I'm going to get into some Elden Ridge. Oh my God, what's his name again? Breckenridge Elkins. Oh my God!
Just call him Breck.
Okay,
He'll let you call him Breck.
Okay, that'll be a little easier. So one thing that happened in here, and I don't think I really clocked it until you have a panel where something happens and he's kind of thrown backwards, and the raccoon on his head comes off. It wasn't until that moment that I really realized, he's actually wearing a full raccoon on his head. I saw obviously the coonskin cap, and I hadn't really put it together. And then I realized, wait a minute, it was there on the page all the time. There's just this raccoon on his head, and I guess it's alive because after that panel, he kind of almost like it wakes up the raccoon, and then we do see him.
That's his friend. Yeah, that's his buddy. You could. I think at some point Tom names him, doesn't he?
He does, but I almost didn't realize what he was saying because I hadn't made that connection that this thing was alive the entire time.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about a couple of different things. I don't know what he ended up coming up with because we talked about naming him Cappy after Al Cap.
I think he did. I think he did actually,
and because he was a Cap, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that came from a very weird place for me because one of the things that you'll notice when you read that wonderful story is that character is he's very mountain man. They talk about bear steaks. Mm-hmm. And they talk about, wrestling animals and obviously mountain men live off the land and they live off the critters and all this kind of stuff. And I am not that man at all. Okay. I am a dog lover. I am a cat lover. I am a bear lover. I am a nature lover. And the whole idea of having to do a scene where Breckenridge Elkins is like, or even Conan is like wrestling with a bear and cracks its jaw open and stuff like Buscema drew 1,000,000 times, does not appeal to me. I'm a sissy. Okay, let's clarify that for the benefit of the rest of the conversation. I am a sissy boy that is an animal lover and is not really comfortable with all that incredibly manly behavior. Okay? So, one of the things that they often, that Breckenridge Elkins was often portrayed as by other illustrators with the pulp stories over all these years is wearing a coonskin cap. Mm-hmm. And I was doing research on coonskin caps. And real coonskin caps quite often have the head and face of the raccoon on them. And that makes me nauseous. The idea of wearing the dead animal on your head with its face and head and everything, I understand the need for it. I'm a meat eater. I know I'm a huge hypocrite, but that I don't like it. So I pitched to Tom the idea that we show him with the coonskin cap. He leaves the cabin with the coonskin cap and all this, and when he finally encounters what he encounters, and I'll leave it to you to spoil it. But when the title of the story is The 2-Ton Terror, when he finally encounters the 2-Ton Terror, mm-hmm. That his hat jumps off his head because it's not just a hat, it's his friend. That he's one of these mountain men that is a little more communing with nature type of guy, that kind of thing. It's my own little twist and contribution to the tall tales of Breckenridge Elkins. And I hope the ghost of Robert E. Howard won't mind too much. But yes, that was something that I threw in because Ron's a sissy.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because it plays really well because I just double checked it. So the moment that he's kind of thrown backwards and it kind of leaps off him, that's when Tom puts in the narration. Even my faithful companion Cappy knew he was in the soup now. So at that moment, it's very funny on the page because then I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, and then it does make me go back and go, oh yeah, he was there the whole time. he's actually alive. And so I did think that was a fun reveal. Like, you don't realize one's coming because you just kind of take it for granted on the page because you never really see Cappy's eyes open. You just kind of see him, kind of dozing, basically. So it's really...
Yeah, he's up there on his head, but he's just kind of minding his own business and going along for the ride until the 2-Ton Terror shows up. And then in another element of, which I played up a little bit more than maybe Tom mentioned, because Tom we've talked about this before, he's a consummate storyteller when he has a story he wants to tell. And this story is about family. The theme of this story is what you do for your family. And the part of that I really enjoyed that I wanted to play up too, I mean, it was there the whole time, but with it I wanted to play up, is that the Two-Ton Terror is also defending his family. And so I wanted to make sure that it was made clear in the artwork that the turtles that he's collecting to make turtle soup, which again, I understand, but, I don't like it. I don't like to be the guy that knows how the sausage is made. And again, I'm a hypocrite. But anyway, when the Two-Ton Terror makes himself known, you see the other turtles getting out of the bag. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make sure that was there. Of course, Breck resents that and has now made it harder for him to supply dinner for his family, and thus and so forth. The adventure continues. So again, that's another thing which I understand is completely me, and I'm not in any way trying to defend it, and I'm not in any way trying to condemn people that feel differently, because I'm glad people feel differently. I'm glad there are good Conan stories out there, and I can enjoy a really good Conan story. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that I am dying to do or seeking out myself. That kind of manly violence doesn't appeal to me. Mm-hmm. It's even making it hard for me to enjoy some of the stuff that's going on with the Marvel characters now on Disney Plus and all that kind of stuff. It's not something I enjoy. It's a different vibe for those characters than what I'm looking for.
Well, that's very true.
Please, let's. Yeah,
it's interesting you bring up the idea that it is a story about family. And so Tom has this great kind of dialogue where he's like, "I knew I had to decide between facing a gang of hungry Elkins or battling the Two-Ton Terror." And I love that juxtaposition. That I'd much rather just have to deal with this monster. This is not as bad as having to deal with my hungry family.
And we do that one shot where Cappy is still there watching the fight, worried about Breck. Yeah, so, he doesn't just leave. He's right there. There's nothing he can do to help, really. But, yeah. I mean, if we do more stories, maybe we'll just do a Cappy solo tale of Cappy, the Hat.
You have this great shot when he's going out kind of looking for the turtles, and I guess his method for getting the turtles. I love the visual of that. I'm curious, was that something kind of in Tom's plot? Was that kind of a decision that you kind of made artistically as a way of showing how he's able to get the turtles in a quick, succinct manner? I'm curious how that came about.
That was actually in the plot by Tom. The fact that because it is part of the Breckenridge Elkins character, that he is very, very resilient. He has a very high pain tolerance. Mm-hmm. He has very tough skin, and he is a very tough man. So the idea of the snapping turtles, that's what you're referring to? The yes. Snapping turtles just grabbing his fingers and stuff? Yeah, yep. that was suggested by Mr. DeFalco. So.
When you draw a page like that, again, it's a very specific kind of visual. Did it take a bunch of tries to kind of get that right, to get the kind of the right sense of the weight of the moment, having the various different turtles on there? It's out of the box in terms of it's not what you maybe necessarily expect to see on a page. So I'm curious how you tackled it.
That I did not see it as something that needed to be tackled.
Okay.
That was just kind of par for the course working with Tom DeFalco.
That's why you're an amazing illustrator, and I can't even conceive of it.
No, I know what hands look like, I know what fingers look like, and I had turtle reference, so it all kind of came together.
Excellent. I'm not trying to spoil anything necessarily, but the last page I really like because there's so much going on, and yet it flows very simply and nicely, but which can be difficult when you have as many characters as you have on the page. I'm curious, how did you approach something like this when you do have so many different characters and things happening all at once? How do you kind of work on the sequencing so that it still flows narratively and that your eyes kind of naturally take it all in?
I don't know. I have always relied heavily on a more natural eye, I guess. I don't. It's not a design choice necessarily. It's just what works and what doesn't for me at the thumbnail stage. And it was one of those scenes where I decided the best way to show it was from overhead, and it's one of those moments, kind of like drawing the city in the background of a Spider-Man story. It's like, well, you chose this angle, you just have to draw all these figures and make sure that Breck stays the center of the eye goes to the center and all that kind of stuff, and you just start drawing. But Pat placed the gray tones, as part of the inking. Pat Olive added the gray tones, which help amazingly in keeping the figures popped and keeping the eye moving and keeping the eye going where it's supposed to go. So, Pat would certainly should claim credit for some of that as well. I will give him all the credit in the world for that.
I think there are parts of at least 22 different characters in that particular image. That's why I was really blown away by it when I saw it, because there's just so much happening. But again, it's all clear. It's all very concise. There's never too much happening and never too much overlapping other characters, which was why I was kind of so impressed by it, because it was so clear when it'd be easy to get lost in it because you do have so many characters.
Clarity am my business. That's something that, I've always seen as being part of the primary goal of good storytelling is clarity. So I'm glad it worked for you, because that's what we shoot for all the time. So.
Now, for this particular story, did you use the regular size boards or did you use a bigger board, considering that it ends up being on a bigger page? So I wasn't curious if you used the same usual board.
They sent me there is a different proportion for the black and whites. They're a little wider than the standard comic size. So they sent me what's the word I'm trying to think of, Adam? A template, a computer template for their proportion.
Okay.
And I just went to a Kinko's and shrunk that to the size that would fit on an 11 by 17 board, a standard Marvel board, and lined off my boards so it would be the correct proportion for the story. And so it I was working on standard Marvel boards just with a slightly different proportion, a little wasted space at the bottom, that kind of thing. And Pat inked it digitally, so I don't know what that meant for how he handled it, but that can be a later interview if you choose to go that route. Because I don't get them computer guys at all. I just thank God they're there.
For sure. Now, when you are doing a book where it's just going to end up being in the black and white and it isn't being colored, so you know that it's going to be a more truer expression of what you and Pat are putting on the page, not to denigrate colorists, but it obviously is different and it goes through a different process once there's something layered on top and that's not going to happen. Do you approach the art differently, knowing that there isn't going to be any color that's going to end up obscuring certain details?
Slightly. I went a little more into detail on the Two-Ton Terror. I threw in some extra tone on the trees and the backgrounds and things like that because we weren't going to have color doing any of that for us. And then I told Pat, indulge yourself. I mean, they're going to want grays. You do them however you want to do them. And I told him to indulge himself on the backgrounds and everything because of all those reasons. And And he did to a certain degree. I mean, I like what he did with the grays. There were a couple of times that in the pencils, I had cross-hatching to do a gray tone, and he just did it with the Zipatone gray tones in the computer. That worked out, that much better. But yeah, I mean, you definitely approach it differently. Even on the pencil stage, I was approaching it differently than I would have if it were full color, if I knew it was going to be reproduced for color. So.
It's interesting reading it. I'm just kind of scanning it now, and given what you've said kind of about, okay, I say this affectionately and only because you said it, the idea of you being kind of a sissy and not liking violence, but liking action. It makes me read this differently in a very positive way, because things I really liked about it, I think I like more knowing kind of what the thought processes were going in. Like when you have, when the Two-Ton Terror kind of chomps down on his leg, it's not played up grisly or gratuitous, which some artists might do. It's just more of like a matter of fact, like there's just something on his leg, but there's no blood effects. There's, you're not playing up the violence or that aspect of it, which I like. And then even in the next page, when you have kind of the big moment, I almost going to call it a Buscema punch, but when you have that big kind of punch moment, again, it feels more action-oriented, not violent, if that makes sense. And now understanding your sensibilities a little bit better, I think I can put a finger on that better.
Well, that's part of it. Certainly, I wasn't interested in showing any gore, because it's very much a tall tale type of a story, even though it's part of Savage Sword of Conan, But also keep in mind, I can't take complete credit for that, because part of the Breckenridge Elkins character is that he is incredibly injury resistant.
True.
So, even having a giant snapping turtle grabbing his leg, he's not reacting the way you and I would to that whole situation. But as far as like the big punch panel not having blood on it and everything, then yes, a lot of the storytelling, as far as you go to the far shot of the fight going on for however long it's going to go on, and then you cut to what you cut to as far as the preparation and all that kind of stuff. That's the way it was plotted, and I was all for that, given my squeamishness. So I was all for that. I liked the way Tom handled it, and I don't mind if human beings are punching each other and stuff. That's okay. But yeah, the Two-Ton Terror was only protecting his family. He just lost the fight.
Mm-hmm. One thing
it's nature. It's nature.
One thing I don't think I've maybe given you credit for this before, but especially I enjoyed it here. There's just something about the way that you do facial hair that I really enjoy, like the different types of it and different breadths of it. Like in the second last page, where you have that kind of disagreement at the back of the page, at the bottom of the page, and you have like kind of a more standard kind of handlebar mustache. You have a guy with a fuller beard, but also having the mustache, which almost looks more like one of your Asgardian characters. It just made me realize like how much I like your bearded characters, if that makes sense.
Well, I appreciate that. I was trying in the course of the other characters, because Breck didn't really supply it. As far as, I gave him the thick eyebrows and thick sideburns. But using the other brothers and cousins, I also was, and the clothing, I was trying to give it a time period as well. Because the time period I was going for would be the time period that the stories were originally published, which were in the 30s, and my impression of some of the stories would have been like set in the 20s and or 30s, up in the mountains, and so I was with the collarless shirts and the handlebar mustaches, and I was certainly trying to give it some sense of that era, as well as is keeping the characters separate and hopefully unique and all of that kind of stuff.
I did find the visual, again, for lack of a better word, the acting that you kind of give to the main character throughout the book, really interesting. Like, you have those flashes of kind of when he's in the thick of it, so you have a different kind of mental image of what that character is kind of going through, and they're kind of a harder edge at that moment because they're in the middle of a fight. But then you have the softer edge, like at the end of the story, where he's kind of looking at the camera, and as we have kind of the narration kind of spelling us off, or even earlier when he's first going out and he's talking to now I forget the woman's name, but the woman.
I believe it's Glory.
Yes,
yeah.
I think you're right. When he's leaving her, like, again, the expressions on his face are a lot gentler, and again, a little bit more playful. So I really enjoyed the storytelling just on the character's face, because, as you said, you don't have necessarily a lot of room, so you have to use the facial expressions to really help tell the story as well. And so I thought the character acting was really on point.
Well, thank you very much. And that was important for an 8-page story. You got to get what you can in there when you can. And that's where the Jethro Bodine comparison comes in, because he's not super intelligent. He is a simple man with simple needs. And it comes through in the first person narration, that he is, he even has, varying degrees of self-awareness, that kind of thing. But he's boyish, and he is young. I get the impression he's the younger of his brothers and cousins and such. And that's why I wanted to keep him clean-shaven. There are other illustrators who have drawn him with a full beard and very much more like a mountain man from the Revenant or something like that. And that, when I was doing my research, that's not the character I was seeing. I leaned more into the tall tale nature of a lot of his stories that Robert E. Howard did, and the whimsy of the stories and the good naturedness of the character and the events that the stories cover. So, but yeah. I mean, but when I approached Tom, I called him at one point to ask him about Breck's father and how he wanted me to approach Breck's father, or even the brothers. I said, are they all godlike brutes, or is there a variety of them? And when it came to his father, do you see him as Odin, or do you see him as? And before I could finish, he went, I see him as Pappy Yoakum from Little Abner. And I went, really? And he went, yeah, that's kind of how I'm seeing him. You? And I said, well, I mean, that's one way to go. I said, what's fascinating to me about seeing him as slighter and shorter is that I'm thinking about Breck's mommy must be an Amazon. For him to be this big, brutish, hulking human, that kind of suggests that it's somewhere in his DNA. So it might be one of those relationships where Pappy met an Amazon and had a brood with her. I don't know. I don't know whether Robert E. Howard ever really told any stories that explored Breck's mom at all. But it would be fun. It would be fun. And then the same way that I finally just had to embrace the Jethro-ness, the Jethro Bodine-ness of Breckenridge Elkins, I also gave up and had to just embrace for the character Glory. I just had to embrace that she's Ellie Mae. I mean, that's just who she is. I mean, I was trying to approach it with, more fashions that were more from that era and would be more specific to her going to get water for her family and all this. And I played with a few sketches of, how they would tie up their long skirts to walk into the stream to get the water, and on and on and on. And I finally just said, she's in like 3 panels, and she's Ellie Mae. I mean, what am I doing? That kind of thing. And so that's what I ended up doing, and it worked fine for the story, and Tom liked it fine, and it worked for him, and because I was even asking Tom things like, do you see her as a brunette or a blonde? And I said, well, she's got to be a blonde, right? And I went, okay, but that makes her even more Ellie Mae, that kind of thing. So what can I tell you?
It's funny to hear you talk about it, because we've talked before about like how much you put a lot into these projects, you in detail, and like this is how we get A Next, right? You put in so much detail to a one-off panel in What If 105, and eventually we get a whole book because of it. Because you do like coming up with the sketches, creating lived-in worlds, even when maybe it's not necessary, but you do this extra work that makes it feel more lived in and adds more extra depth and dimension to the overall story you're telling. Whether it's 8 pages here or like 30 pages somewhere else, you're always kind of bringing in that level of detail.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's... I can't tell you. I'm looking right now. I'm scanning through my Breckenridge Elkins folder of, the research I did on the character. But I also did research on catching turtles and what's the best time of day to hunt turtles and catch turtles. And it was crazy. I was telling Tom about it, and he was laughing, and he goes, this is why I love you, Ron. It was nuts. Because I was even looking for specifically swamp-like areas of the area that I keep wanting to say Edgar Rice Burroughs, and that's not Robert E. Howard, the area that he placed Elkins in, which is... let's see, where he lives in the fictional Bear Creek in the Humboldt Mountains of Nevada. So I got on the internet, and I'm looking, okay, I need the terrain of Atlanta. What would a swamp-like terrain in Atlanta, or not Atlanta, what am I saying, in Nevada, the mountains of Nevada? What would be the closest I could find to a swamp? And even that is ludicrous. It's basically ludicrous to worry about it because, as I said, these are tall tales. So it's like, what are you worried about? That kind of thing. But I was able to find some reference of the topography that really helped me, design the panels where he's in the water collecting the turtles and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it helps me. It helps me ground it in what it really is, and makes it fun for me. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, to do the reference. I got all kinds of turtle reference in here, and topography and period pieces, and even some pictures of different styles of coonskin caps and all this kind of stuff, and some reference of Jethro and Ellie Mae and all kinds of stuff. Even for the final scene, I have reference of chopped up onions and chopped up potatoes and chopped up mushrooms. So I leave nothing to chance.
That I believe, because looking at it, I was like, this looks well researched.
What can I tell you? But
so
yeah, I mean. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, no, you go ahead, because I had a diversion, so please continue.
Well, it's just with Breckenridge Elkins, even some of the other illustrators I saw that were handling it, they had him barefoot like a mountain man. Mm-hmm. There's one that I don't understand where he's leaning against the fence, and there's a bear standing next to him that's got a little hat on, a little bowler hat on. And I asked Tom about it, and he goes, I have no idea what that is. I said, if we could do a story where he's got a friend who's a bear, I would love that. But, it would have to be the story of what puts Breck off of bear steaks for the rest of his life, that kind of thing. Because you can't have a best friend that's a bear and then have bear steaks be part of your diet, can you?
No, I don't think so. So
there you go.
I have a question that I believe I know the answer to. So, so far, I mean, obviously the issue just came out as we speak, so it's right on the stands now. Do you did they send you a digital version of the particular magazine? There's a specific reason I ask, so I'm curious if they've sent you like a PDF of issue 15 of Savage Sword yet.
No.
Not yet? Okay.
No, nothing like that. I have not seen it. I actually was on my list of things to do today to maybe go out and pick up a copy, but I never got around to it. I've seen Pat's inks, but I have not seen the lettered pages. I've seen Tom's script. I've seen, all that, but I haven't seen it all put together for the final page. No.
The reason why I ask, and I only find it funny because of what you said earlier, is that, so you were talking before about, obviously Conan, right now we've had some amazing artwork by Roberto De La Torre. He does a pinup of Breckenridge Elder right before your story.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
What's he look like?
Different. It looks older. He looks older, has like I'll send you a picture after our conversation, but it's a very different interpretation. Definitely an older man holding a rifle, but definitely looks like he's in the wilderness.
Does he have a beard?
He has a beard.
Okay, yeah, because the other story that they did in Savage Sword, I believe, there was another illustrator, and I can't remember his name at this point. I don't know whether I kept that in my file folder or not. But there was another Breckenridge Elkins story done for Savage Sword already that showed him as being very, very much like out of the Revenant or something, with he was wearing skins and a full beard and looking very kind of brutal and brutish. That didn't really appeal to me, and it's not what I was seeing in other versions from book covers and frontispieces and illustrations for some of the tall tales and stuff. So yeah, I obviously chose not to go that way, but I do. Is he standing on a bunch of werewolves?
No,
that's Patrick Zurcher. Yeah, I'm looking at one now where he's standing on a pile of werewolves with a rifle over his head and a beard and a coonskin cap and a bloody knife and all kinds of mountain man regalia and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we did go a different direction, but the editors didn't seem to have much to say about it. The other person was the other illustrator was Juan Alberto Hernandez.
Okay.
And it was a story called The 12th Labor of Breckenridge Elkins. It was written by Patrick Zurcher.
Oh, okay.
So, and they went a very different direction with their portrayal of the character.
It is interesting, though.
You pays your money and you takes your chances.
Yeah, you do. Well, it's interesting because when you talk about the idea of, telling it as a tall tale, I found yours to be more in tune with that idea. If I go into it with the idea of I'm going to read a tall tale, there's just something to the fun and but also just the way that you guys portrayed the tale kind of works for me from that perspective, if that makes sense. From being
I had seen different portrayals of the character, and I discussed it with DeFalco, and I said, what are you seeing? And he saw the more boyish treatment. That brought out some of the innocence of the character and everything, and he saw that treatment, and he said, I'd lean more into that, Ron, if I were you. And I went, I got no problem with that, Tom. You're introducing me to this character. I had thought that maybe it was a longtime favorite of Tom's, but as we got into the process, I found out that Tom had just recently discovered Breckenridge Elkins himself. And I went, I had no idea. And he goes, yeah, I'm not well versed on the character, but I just really enjoyed the character when I started reading some of the stories. And I said, well, then we're learning about him together. So.
Well, good, which works obviously about a character like this as well is obviously the fact that you guys are using a younger version. Characters have multitudes, right? So I mean, I think people can do an older, more grizzled version, and yours is more youthful and hopeful one.
These are the untold tales of Breckenridge Elkins. What can I tell you?
Absolutely. So I'm not going to keep you too much longer. We have a tendency sometimes to go like 2 hours, and I love every minute of it, but would like to not always monopolize your time. But I did have some questions about... a listener I had asked some people, like, what type of thing should I ask Ron? Like, I'm trying to, always trying to find something new and exciting that we can talk about with regards to your work or a different avenue in. And he brought up an interesting question because we've talked a lot about your enduring runs. We've talked about, working on Thor, Spider-Girl, etc. And where you have a long run where you you figure it out as you go in terms of what your interpretation of that character is going to be, and then you really kind of grow into that and figure out what you want to do. So we wanted to... what he was interested in, and I thought was an interesting idea, was what can you tell us about the process of working on fill-ins in general? Because unlike doing a longer run with someone like Tom, where you have time to kind of stretch your legs, you're hitting it for usually just an issue, maybe two. You're working with someone that maybe you don't have a long history with or a shorthand, and you're kind of getting that issue out. Maybe it's a deadline thing that they're coming to at the last minute, so you don't even have the benefit of the time you would normally have. So I'm curious how you have approached fill-ins throughout your career.
Is very much the way I have a feeling you're anticipating this answer, and I won't disappoint you because it is the opposite of what you were just saying about when you actually inherit or are awarded a character. For the long term, it's very much the opposite of that. Often you're sent the issue before, and your real job is to just not completely knock it off the racks. This is what the book looks like. This is kind of what we'd like to still have when your issue is done. That kind of thing. So you look very much to how the character's being handled at that time, and for me, anything I would do to adjust a character would be done over time, and so I'm not going to do, well, let's say, since I know it's on your list, if I'm doing a fill-in issue of the Hulk, I am not going to say, this is my Hulk. This is what I need to say about the Hulk. If I were to be awarded the book, I would come on the book, and if my editor had no problem with me, taking the character in one direction or another and getting it to something a little bit more like the way I see the character, that would be one thing. But that is not when you're doing a fill-in. When you're doing a fill-in, you're going to draw him as much like the guy that's the regular artist or the last guy that did the book, and you're going to handle it that way. You're even going to pay attention to some of the storytelling and do the storytelling. When I took over Spider-Man, the first half of 251 was I was trying to kind of recreate some of John Romita Jr.'s storytelling and panel layout until I got towards the end. And when the big fight started, I just opened it up and did 4 panel pages and all this kind of stuff, which was what I'm more comfortable with. And Roger Stern, who plotted the issue, actually told me, I really enjoyed that. I really thought you did a nice job of kind of capturing JR's storytelling. And so when you're doing a fill-in, that's how I kind of see your duty to the material, is to not inject too much of yourself in it, especially if you're wrapping up a story or you're coming in halfway through a story or something like that. I believe that Hulk story was written by Jerry Ordway.
Yes, it was.
Was part 2 or part 3 of an ongoing thing that involved Tyrannus and all this. So I was just looking at the Ron Garney stuff that led up to it, and I was just doing breakdowns on the job. I guess Sal was the finisher, I believe, and did a terrific job with it. But it was lettered and colored by the regular guys, and so I was just trying to not have it stand out too much and not look like crap.
When you're coming on a job like that and you have so we're talking about Hulk number 10 for those playing at home. So it was Ordway and
volume whatever. I'm not that old, so it's like volume 27.
True.
Number 10.
Yes, it might have been volume 2 or 3 actually at that point. Nowadays, it's probably volume 27. But it was plotted by Ordway and Garney, but Ordway scripted it, and then you're the guest penciler. And then, obviously, as you said, you have Sal Buscema doing finishes. So it feels like in the process, it was probably a later job because it's kind of sandwiched between 2 Garney books. So when they come to you with something that's has more of a schedule issue and really needs to be put out, like, what are you finding that you're like? Obviously, you're always trying to put out your best work, but how much pressure do you put under yourself to get it under that tight deadline? Like, what are you doing to make that happen?
Well, you absolutely are very concerned with the deadline, because the whole point of doing the fill-in is to gain them a little bit of time, is to gain the regular team some time. So they cannot afford to have you be late with a fill-in. I mean, they're moving on to the next issue, and hopefully they've given themselves some lead time on the next issue. But yeah, the absolute last thing you can be is late for a fill-in. So the deadline is always foremost in a freelancer's thoughts, or should be. And in that case, like I said, I was in breakdown mode, because knowing I was working with Sal, I mean, he can pick up the slack, and as I remember, Garney's style on that book was a little more open, and had because I think Sal might have even been the regular inker on a lot on that stuff. I think he was inking.
I think you're
Garney
right
on that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I was the only fill-in guy, and so I was just getting the story told, and trying to kind of look at the prior issue and keep it in the same vein, and leaving it up to Sal to kind of keep the consistency and stuff. I don't know how successful we were. It's been years since I've looked at it, but it is what it is. The books. Back in the day, the books came out whether you were on them or not, my friend.
So
the dreaded deadline doom.
Absolutely. Now, a question I have is that when you're working on a book like that, obviously it is a fill-in, but you're working with a writer who is also well-known as an artist. So you have Jerry Ordway is writing the book. Do you recall, I'm asking you something about 26 years ago, and it was a one-off, so you may not remember, but do you recall, was it a detailed plot? Was it still like Marvel style, or was it more detailed, and how much did you kind of have to figure out on the page, or was it a lot of it just in-depth in the plot, and because it's coming from Jerry, he kind of knows instinctively what he needs it to say visually?
I don't remember it being overly detailed. I don't remember because, I don't remember thinking because he's an illustrator, he's being overly solicitous or anything, or overly descriptive or anything like that. And it's possible that it might have been even shorthand because he was assuming it was going to go to Ron Garney, who was his regular partner. I mean, there are a lot of times. There were times on Spider-Man that that Tom had to contact a fill-in artist because the plot was originally done for me and was much more open. And he would contact the artist and say, if you need more, let me know, because Ron and I discussed this. So he's working off of that. If it was an issue I had to give up for one reason or another, so that happens as well.
There's a number of pages in the issue where, it's kind of like a cave-in type of situation, or they're in the caves. And it's funny because obviously I really enjoyed your Fantastic Fanfare, for Fantastic Four Fanfare issue, which also kind of dealt with being in a mine type of idea. So it brought that visual kind of sensibility back to me, which I enjoyed. But one thing that I really liked in this fill-in was how your portrayal of Nick Fury felt very kind of classic Nick Fury, and so I thought you did a great job channeling that version of the character.
Well, thank you. It's always been, I don't remember much about what I did with Nick on that. I wish I had a copy handy, but I don't. But Nick has always been a character I've enjoyed. I was probably trying to stick to if he had shown up in a prior issue or whatever, I was probably trying to stick to that as much as possible. But but yeah, we used him in Thunderstrike. We used him in I don't know if we used him in Thor, but I know we used him in Thunderstrike, and it was always a joy to handle the character, and because what I always liked about Nick and the treatment I always enjoyed was the 5 o'clock shadow, grizzled, wearing regular clothes when everybody else was wearing their little shield jumpsuits and all that kind of stuff, and and a little bit more than the Jim Steranko slick spy stuff and everything. I was always more into the Sal Buscema treatment of the character during his time in Captain America, early in Sal's run and stuff. And so when we handled him in Thunderstrike, I had Nick and Dum Dum were wearing their regular clothes, and everybody else was in their little super spy outfits and stuff. And I don't really remember how I handled him in this story. I bet he was in his super spy outfit, though, wasn't he?
He was.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember there's a shot in there where they come out of the mine, and there's like this hovercraft, there's this shield hovercraft of some kind, and I had no ideas for this thing. I just threw in a shape with some propellers or something like that, and I was hoping Sal would play with it a little bit, and I remember it coming out looking very basic, very just kind of there, right?
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
You can say it. Yeah, it was, just that sometimes happens when you're just doing breakdowns. What can I tell you?
So interesting enough, so you mentioned like Dum Dum and you mentioned Nick Fury. So in and around this same period, did you do a fill-in issue of Captain America, issue 24? This would have been, actually, I have no idea which volume this would have been, but this would have been the volume that started in 98. And so this is a little bit different because it's not just a fill-in, but it's also a fill-in with you and Tom doing the fill. Like, it's a complete fill-in package as opposed to just kind of spotting off an ongoing storyline. So obviously this one has a very different feel because it's not you parachuting in, but everyone else is the regulars. It's, you and Tom coming in and telling this Captain America story. It's funny reading it now. It's a lot of fun. First of all, it feels like you guys are definitely having a lot of fun with the character and doing very kind of classic stuff with both Crossbones and Absorbing Man. How much do you remember of how you guys got this gig?
Well, how we got it, I don't know. Who was the editor on the book at the time? Do you have it in front of you there?
It would have been Bobby Chase.
Oh, well, that's it. Bobby is, she was aware of if we were looking for work. You said it was, 98?
98 was when the volume started. I think the issue's 99, just at the end of 99.
Okay. Yeah, that was probably when I was kicking around looking for work. It's possible. Tom even went in and said, Bobby, do you have anything? Because Ron could use some work. And he might have written it just to kind of give me something to do. I don't know. But it's possible at that time frame. But I do remember there was a fairly quick turnaround time. I had to do just breakdowns on it. And we were thinking that Sal was going to ink it. And I was looking forward to that. We ended up working with the regular inker, Jesse Delperdang.
That's right.
Who did a terrific job on the cover, but didn't seem to know what to do with breakdowns. It's interesting because it's sometimes it's an era thing. It's a training thing. It's a finisher as opposed to an inker thing. And I can't speak. I never spoke to Jesse about the job, so I have no idea what Mr. Delperdang was thinking. Because one of the things that happens, and the best example I can give, and again, I'm not trying to compare myself to John Buscema in any way, shape, or form. I would never do that. You know that. But there was a series of comics where John Buscema did layouts. He just did breakdowns on issues of the Punisher.
Oh.
And they were handed to different anchors, different anchors of different levels of skill, anchors of different levels of commitment, different levels of perception. And what some of them loved was the energy and the movement and the motion of John Buscema's breakdowns to the point that they didn't try to tighten them up at all. Okay? And that is not what the intention of the penciler is when they are paid to do breakdowns on a job. Okay?
Yeah.
When we're paid to do breakdowns on a job, we are intending for the inker to inject a little bit more of themselves and to finish the drawings. Okay? Make them look complete, make them look like that's what we intended. In the case of this Captain America issue, and again, I cannot speak for what Mr. Delperdine was thinking. I don't know. But I wish he had added more to the finished product than he did. I don't know whether he liked the energy of my breakdowns or whether he thought that was the main point of what I had laid down, or, you know, it needed to be maintained, or what. I have no idea what he was thinking. But I remember seeing the finished piece, I was like, well, that should have been a black, and that should have been finished, and that was, it was a little looser than I intended, you know, because it was loose breakdowns. The story itself, I love. Tom and I would have loved to have done a run on Captain America together. We both love the character. I think Tom would do a fantastic job. And when we were given the opportunity to do a fill-in, we jumped in with both feet and really wanted to, you know, have a say about Captain America. Because the one thing Tom and I have always talked about with Captain America is that, you know, the splash page drops you right in the middle of the action. Mm-hmm. You are holding on for dear life, and the story never slows down, and you get to the end, and the flag is waving, and, you know, the trumpets are blaring, and the sun is rising, and the end, you know, that kind of thing. And we very much tried to do that in that 22-page story. And so, yeah, it was a pleasure. It was a real pleasure to do an issue of Captain America. And I was very, very happy with what Tom did, and, you know, ultimately what the issue looked like. So.
It's interesting having you talk about it. So first of all, it is a lot of fun. It's you know, it feels very kind of classic Cap in a lot of ways. Even at the end, you know, where Cap's kind of shouting, "One man can always make a difference." If anyone else said it, it may not work as well. There's something about it being Cap in the story that works better, and doesn't feel hackneyed or silly, because it just feels like that's what that person would believe in and espouse. So really like that. It's interesting looking at a lot of the kind of more action-oriented moments. You do have kind of more of maybe a Kirby design sense in terms of some of the punches and some of the effects of when, you know, for example, a character will punch the shield, and the effect of it, almost you can almost feel the reverberations on the shield in that moment because the detail changes. And so I'm wondering how much of that. It's
all shock lines, yeah.
Yeah, and so I really liked how you utilized those kind of... I don't want to call them shortcuts because they feel like I'm undercutting your art, but I did like how it added a sense of design.
It's the language that I grew up with. It's the language of Marvel superhero action. It's not used as often anymore, but I find it to be... exactly what's needed most of the time. Mm-hmm. You know, motion lines and those impact lines, and you know, that just sound like a cymbal crashing in your head. That's Marvel Comics to me. So I will never apologize for that. It just is, you know, it's part of my DNA. I think it's part of the DNA of the characters, and I don't think it should have been abandoned. Mm-hmm. But that is my humble opinion. And I also want to mention that this story also continued Tom and mine's love affair with Crusher Creel, with Carl. I love that character. We used him in Thor. We used him in Thunderstrike, and he is a terrific character. And his interaction with Cap in that story is worth the money. So if you what number was it?
It was issue 24.
Volume.
I don't know.
Exactly.
The volume that started in 98.
24 that wasn't from the 1940s. There you go.
That's exactly right.
And but if you can find a copy, I highly recommend it. Tom DeFalco did a hell of a job, and it's a brief glance at what a run of Captain America by Tom and Ron would have looked like. So, maybe with Sal Buscema inking or Brett Breeding inking or Joe Sinnott inking, but I doubt Jesse would have been interested in coming along for the ride. But it's a preview of what we would have liked to have done with that character every month. It's a wonderful character, and what can I tell you? I was very proud of the issue. Thank you.
It was an interesting placement because the first 23 issues are written by Mark Waid, and then the following 26 issues are by Dan Jurgens. And so right in the middle, right, just kind of as this kind of dividing line is you and Tom. And I think, incidentally, I think it is the last Captain America issue of the 20th century. And then we switch into the year 2000 right afterwards.
I see. Yeah, and I also want to point out, Jesse Delperdine did incredible work over Adam Kubert. Which he worked. I think they worked together on a version of Kesar, and I think they were working together with Mark Waid on the run of Cap up to that point. And it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. And that cover is terrific. He was an incredibly competent and talented and very good inker over full pencils. I don't know whether he just didn't know what to do with breakdowns, or whether that's all he had the time to do over the breakdowns, or whether he thought he was best serving those breakdowns. I really can't say, but yeah, it happens. There are so many factors that go into that, to all of those decisions that I really can't speak to it. So there you go.
If we go back a little bit, and by a little bit I mean like 20 years almost, but if we go back to Captain America, now this is the longer running volume that went 400 issues, so hopefully people will be able to find this. Issue 290 had you doing a guest spot. Although again, here you were doing breakdowns and working with James DeMatteis. Now this is earlier in your career, so I'm curious how this particular gig came about. Now, this one is over 40 years old, so I would imagine probably don't have a lot of memories necessarily, but what was it like drawing?
Unfortunately, I don't.
No? Okay.
I really don't, I don't know. Was Ralph Macchio the editor at that point?
Well, that is a good question. Let me just double check the credits here. No, Mark Rurenwald was the editor. You did the breakdowns, and Steve La Jolla.
And it was wonderful working with him. He did a wonderful job on the finishes. But yeah, it was a breakdown job. It was. I don't remember the circumstances of the fill-in. I remember I was offered one other fill-in at one point. It ended up being the issue where Cap spends the entire time in a hotel room and and decides to give the costume back to the commission. So it was right at the beginning of that, where under Mark's writing. But I don't remember the circumstances of getting the fill-in or what else was going on with me at the time. But I do remember the breakdown job. I do remember. I get credit for creating, is it Mother Superior?
Mother Superior or Sister Superior? Yeah, I know who you mean, though.
Yeah.
I think it is Mother Superior.
Yeah, which ended up being the daughter of the Red Skull or something like that. And, it's crazy when you get credit for creating a character that you just did breakdowns on a fill-in. And it's like, but it's Mark DeMatteis and Ron Frenz, co-created this character, and it's like, okay, that's ludicrous. I remember it had a John Byrne cover, which was kind of interesting because that was at the height of John Byrne's popularity. I don't really remember much about the job other than working with Mark DeMatteis was wonderful. His plots were very tight, and the things about, when he sets up like a rhythm to his stories that are very much in the plots and are very, very much a part of his storytelling technique that is really worth the price of admission. It always has been. And I remember that being part of this story as well, and I tried to serve it as best I could. I don't know how successful I was, but that was a breakdown job where Steve Lealoa comes in and, as a well-rounded illustrator in his own right, just really made it his own and made it look complete and made it work. And it wasn't something that left me anything other than grateful. So.
Now, so this issue of Captain America was coming out in '84, so I'm going to go back one more time to the year before. You worked on Spectacular Spider-Man number 80. This would have been Volume 1. This is doing a story with Bill Mantlo. You have Kevin Zuban on your art, I guess doing the inking.
I cover the waterfront.
That's right. Now, so it's funny.
Flashback of J. Jonah Jameson.
So I knew of this story, but I also, it had been a while since I'd read it, so I reread it because I wanted to talk with you about it. I had forgotten that some elements of it were played for comedic effect when they kind of loosely adapted it for the animated series in the 90s. They kind of used certain ideas here, but this really works. But I was really struck by a lot of your really interesting panel work that I really dug. You have panels of, Jameson kind of walking through his building, and then he's on his level, and he's going to his office, and you have him kind of, each panel is him moving further, across the page, which has a great sense of movement. The following page is just him talking to everyone, but you're just behind him, and you're slowly kind of moving down, you're moving the camera up and up, and you're just, by the end, you only see just the top of his head, and you can see Peter Parker outside. We know who's out there. We know what's happening. There's just so much interesting panel work. So I'm curious what you can remember or tell me about working on this story.
Specifically, not a whole heck of a lot. I love the character of J. Jonah Jameson. Mm-hmm. I always have. I always will. I think he's a fascinating character. I love the idea that this was, getting into his past a little and getting into what he cares about and who he really is as a character and what's important to him. I worked with Bill Mantlo on Marvel Team Up. The issues of Marvel Team Up that I did were by Mr. Mantlo. Tom DeFalco was the editor. So this would have been around the time that I was working for Tom on Team Up and all that kind of stuff. As far as the storytelling, that was very much what was going on at that time at Marvel. And when I think of that type of storytelling, I'm talking about Frank Miller's early stuff on Daredevil. Okay, it's very cinematic. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? Sequential in the truest sense of the form. Okay, and I was doing that on Star Wars. I remember doing more of that on Star Wars back in the day. I just posted on my Facebook page a page from my first Marvel Team Up job that had a sequence like that, a 3 or 4 panel sequence like that. I remember using it especially on Star Wars when it came to some of the comedic bits that Joe Duffy would come up with for the characters and stuff. And I remember using it in my 2 issues of Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. So it was very much a storytelling stylistic choice of the time from guys like Frank Miller, who was very influential at the time with things. So it's something that I did more of when I first came into into the business. And I think if you look at my Kesar work, you'll probably see it in there as well and stuff. And it's not really something that I do a lot of today unless it really serves the story. But I also don't think, I primarily work with DeFalco now, so I don't think that's something that serves Tom's type of storytelling as well. So you'll see me using it with different writers, So I think it was a different approach. I notice it when I look at my older work. As I said, I just posted that page for Marvel Team Up, and I went, wow, I really was doing that kind of sequential stuff, as if it's like a storyboard more, where one element is changing or two elements are changing or something like that.
Yeah.
I can remember scenes in Thor and even in Thunderstrike where it served the sequence to do it that way. In Thor especially, I remember when Eric gave up the custody battle for Kevin, stuff that I used a similar type of storytelling. And it works for certain scenes. But yeah, it's not something I do as often these days, and maybe I'll start thinking about it.
One thing, so when I'm reading it, there's a pivotal moment where you have the Kingpin here, and it definitely feels like Frank Miller's interpretation as opposed to John Romita's interpretation of the character, which obviously was prevalent at the time. So it's interesting knowing how much you like to adhere to, the original intent of a character or the original artistic intent of a character, and you're doing something here where you're parachuting into this is the storyline, this is the era, and you're doing something more era specific. It's interesting to see that, and maybe that's more because it's a fill-in and not something that you're, as you said, you're kind of going to be on it for a longer haul. But it is interesting to see you adapt to something that's very present of the moment as opposed to maybe your natural inclination, which is to honor the original source material.
Right. But even if you look at those, at our issues of Spider-Man with the Rose, the few times that we handled the Kingpin and things like that, at that point, Kingpin was kind of owned by Daredevil and Frank Miller at the time. And, and working with Rubenstein, who is much more of a naturalistic inker and stuff, a more illustrative, naturalistic inker, I really wasn't doing much in the way of Romita's Kingpin in those either. We were doing more shadow work and more of the mass of the character being similar to what Frank Miller was doing at the time. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is era specific, very much so. And there were just certain things that were going on at the time with the continuity of the books and the consistency of the books that it called for that, So.
What is it like when you do a book like this that you're drawing Spectacular Spider-Man? This is the principal kind of B book at the time for Spider-Man. Well, I guess Marvel Team Up was too, but you don't really get to do a lot of Spider-Man here. Like there's obviously you have Spider-Man kind of on the periphery of the story, but he's not the principal character that we're following. When you get an opportunity to do a Spider-Man book and then you get to do so little Spider-Man in it. Are you let down as an artist, or are you just more excited about the challenge of making this story that's just focused on Jameson, making it work?
It's always frustrating when you're told that, like I said, there was that issue of Captain America. I remember being offered. I wasn't able to take it, but it didn't have Cap in it, that kind of thing. So it's always frustrating. It was frustrating when I was given 252 and he wasn't in the red and blues anymore, that kind of thing. Of course, that all worked out for everybody, but when I saw the black suit, it's just like, I waited all my life to do Spider-Man, and now he's not Spider-Man. Anyway, yes, it is frustrating, but as I said, I am a huge J. Jonah Jameson fan, and I remember being very happy to be a part of a story that featured Jameson. And I would always be happy to do a story that features Jameson because I have feelings about Jameson that I'm not sure enough fellow creatives have, because he has been shown to be a very well-rounded character, and I really like that character, feet of clay and all. So it was fun for me to be a part of an issue that featured Jonah.
There's a page, and again, like you're at a disadvantage because I'm trying to make you remember stuff from over 40 years ago, and I'm looking at it right now, so that's not necessarily fair. But there is a page where I don't even know how the visual effects would have happened. You have Jameson. It's kind of, there's really no words on the page. Like there's maybe one word in each panel, but you have 5 panels, and 4 of the panels are just Jameson kind of lighting up his cigar. He's going to the docks. You have all these kind of wavy effects, like it's foggy at night, and it's so atmospheric and it's so well done. And so, however you did it, it was great. But I'm just curious, like how you lay out a page like that, but especially at the time, because it felt like at the time in the early '80s, you usually had more words on a page. Like someone would add more descriptors. They would almost overflood the page at times. But there was such a restraint here by Mantlo, letting your art really breathe and showing so much atmospheric intent. So I'm curious how much you might remember about that. And I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you are, and I'm afraid I don't have much in the way of insights for that.
Okay.
But it is something that when you are given atmosphere, and it's not going to be served by just like a big panel of Jonah standing on a dock, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You do play more with atmosphere. Quite frankly, between you, me, and the lamppost, it might have had something to do with not having a really good reference of warehouses on docks, and so play up the fog. When you don't have really good reference, play up the fog. But I really don't know for sure, Adam. I'm afraid I don't.
That's okay. That might be my favorite takeaway: is just play up the fog. It's great. You were working with Bill Mantlo here. I mean, obviously he was a longtime writer on Spectacular Spider-Man. Do you remember anything about how detailed his plots might have been?
They were very Marvel style. I don't remember them being overly complicated or overly verbose. I enjoyed working off his plots because before that, he and Joe Duffy were my first exposure to true Marvel-style plots, because I think, as I've spoken before, working on Kesar with Bruce Jones, he would write short stories. He would write these wonderful little short stories that didn't have page breakdowns on them or anything, and it was up to me to break down the onto comic pages, and so it was a real interesting way to be thrown in on the deep end and learn the craft. But once I was working with Joe, once I was working with other more mainstream Marvel writers like Bill Mantlo, it became a little more systemized, a little more. I was able to relax a little bit because they would at least do page groupings, if not page counts.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember it being a trial. I remember his plots being pretty easy to interpret visually. But so yeah. I mean, what I enjoyed about that story was that it did. There's like one panel that I remember that just has Jonah, a shot of Jonah running through the panel, and flashback scenes of him as a younger man, I believe, and being a part of seeing a different side of Jonah and a different angle of Jonah really appealed to me, because I don't remember details. I've always drawn Jonah's mustache as a little wider than everybody else because I'm not comfortable with the whole Hitler of it all. And I don't know why any modern human would wear that mustache. So, and if you look at Ditko's early treatments of the character, it wasn't quite that short. It was a little wider. So I was pretty comfortable drawing it a little wider. I don't remember if Kevin Zubin stuck with that or not, because I do remember there were Ditko elements to some of my, what little Spider-Man shows up in there. There were Ditko elements in my pencils that Zubin was pushing towards Ramita elements, because that was very much the standard at the time.
Yeah.
So I do remember we were working at cross purposes. We worked together on that issue, and we worked together on Marvel Team Up Annual that featured the New Mutants and Cloak and Dagger and Spider-Man. It sold huge numbers at the time. The cover was by myself and Klaus Janson, and the interiors were by me and Kevin Zubin. He was somebody that was working out of Tom's office quite a bit. Tom was giving him a lot of work, and in both cases, anytime I would. I mean, there was nothing he could do about the positioning or the storytelling or anything, but when it came to detail on Spider-Man, anything I would do that was sort of Ditko, he would try to get it a little more towards Ramita, which, who can blame him? I mean, I get that. It was much like when I was first doing Kirby on Thor, and Brett Breeding was always trying to push it towards Buscema, that kind of thing. Everybody has their favorites, and at times we were working at cross purposes, but you can't blame a guy for trying.
Absolutely not. Now, the last one I'll kind of end with, and this is kind of a larger question, and I think we've talked about this before, but not in a lot of detail. You did work on the Fantastic Four World's Greatest Comics magazine 12-issue kind of project. I don't think you were involved in every issue, but it's a hard one for most people to understand what you worked on, because the credits never really broke anything down. They were very much like it was inspired by Lee and Kirby, and it was, I believe, masterminded by Eric Larson. So I'm curious, what was it like working on a project like that, where the whole point is really to not ape. That sounds like I'm
that's a fair word. That's a fair word. That was the marching order.
Like, it needs to look like a Kirby book.
We were supposed to be we were trying to make it look like Jack Kirby. No, we were all called upon to do our best Kirby, and the anchors were called upon to do their best Senate. To varying degrees of success. Eric laid out all of it. You can find his layouts. Usually when I show pages from World's Greatest Comics magazine, I usually show Eric's thumbnails so they know what I was working off of and what he deserves credit for and what I don't deserve credit for. So he laid out the entire 12-issue series. What he didn't do, other people did under his supervision, to keep it to 6-panel grids and 4-panel, and 2-tier and 3-tier, and keep it Kirby storytelling. We were not free to indulge ourselves. We were working off of a template that was provided by Eric and by his collaborators, and it was a fun gig. I enjoyed it. I was willing to do as much as they were willing to give me. And usually they gave it to you in like 5-page sequences or so, to break up the issues and to get as many people involved as possible. And but I was very much enjoying the gig, and I believe I was actually traveling when it started, and I wasn't able to join in on the first issue, but I think I came in as early as the second.
I believe that's correct from what I can read online in terms of what people have attributed to you. I believe that is correct. And then that is kind of the weird thing about the book, is that the credits weren't, they weren't transparent.
They were in the letter columns, I believe. I think there was full page breakdowns like in the letter columns or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's interesting because unfortunately that kind of thing hasn't translated to digital versions where people can kind of read it now. And unless they're able to find the original singles, I guess they're not going to get the full attribution. So it's kind of a weird boondoggle as a result. Like, you'd think that someone would maybe think to scan those letter pages then.
Well, I don't know. If that's not the standard, then I could see why that would fall through the cracks. But yeah. So, and I was very lucky because a lot of my pages were inked by Joe Sinnott. The ones that were also fun were the ones that were inked by Bruce Timm. He would ink them on vellum overlays, but he was interested in being involved, and he inked some of Eric's pages, and he did a cover or two, and I was lucky enough to have some of my pages inked by him, and I thought that was really cool because I'm a big Bruce Timm fan. But yeah, it was, it wasn't really high pressure. It was, for me, it was easy because I was such a Kirby freak and a Fantastic Four fan and everything. So I had my reference out in front of me and was following the marching orders, which, if Captain America showed up, or if or more to the point, if like the Falcon showed up, we were called upon to try to do the closest we could, because this very specifically story fell between issue 100 and 101 of the Fantastic Four, I believe, something like that, or between 101 and 102 or something, I forget. But so the character was wearing whatever the character was wearing in that era, but it was supposed to be Kirby's version, what we would imagine Kirby's version would look like of the character and stuff. And so when the X-Men guest starred or when the Avengers showed up or something, it was very much those were the marching orders. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed, doing a Kirby Submariner. And, I was lucky enough to do pages with Dr. Doom and it was a fun gig. I really enjoyed it.
It's interesting. It does feel like it's well suited to your tendencies as well, because you're someone who loves to pay respect to the masters, and to the, as I said before, the original kind of artistic intent of these characters. So being able to do something where you don't have to hide it, you can just wear it on the sleeve because that's literally the remit of the story. Does feel like it's tailor made to be something that would fit your proclivities as an artist.
Yeah, well, I love to ape other illustrators. I mean, that is not a dirty word, and don't be afraid to use it, Adam, because it's kind of what we call it. So, that was a job that was kind of made for me. But there were several guys who did some wonderful work in the course of that of those books. And overall, I thought it was a wonderful idea to celebrate the anniversary. And I don't know how well it sold. I know they did a collected edition and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I do think it's one of those things that Eric Larson doesn't get enough credit for either, because, as you said, like, he really did make that happen, and it was what he wanted, and even to the point where he thumbnailed the whole thing. Like, this was a passion project for sure. And I don't know.
He did a lot of work. He put a lot of work in. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, as I said, I don't know if he gets enough respect for that type of thing, and again, to celebrate Lee and Kirby in that way.
Well, that, and Eric does comics that entertain people. He's very good. I mean, Savage Dragon's been running for how long now? And remember his Defenders run with Kurt Busiek?
Oh yeah,
was a hell of a lot of fun. I actually got to do a couple of fill-in issues of those too during that run, as brief as it was, unfortunately. But those were fun scripts to work off of and everything too. So I mean, those were a couple other fill-ins that I did at the time when I was desperate to find something to pay my rent.
I guess that's something we didn't really talk about today, but obviously, like, there's obviously been some fill-ins where opportunities kind of come up, and there's other times when you need the opportunities to come up, and you have to kind of manufacture these. And so, how much does that play into how you're feeling when you're drawing that fill-in story? Like, if it's one that's kind of come across you, like it found you, and you're wedging it in amongst other projects, do you feel differently about when you're working on something like that versus you're kind of hustling and trying to find the next gig? And
there's more pressure. There's more pressure when you're desperate and somebody throws you a bone and you appreciate it, but you also are feeling the pressure of auditioning again. You know, you're every line you're putting down, you're second guessing it. You're hoping it will show them what you can do, and that they will look at this and go, he should be doing a regular monthly title. And you're a little more concerned about, is this too traditional, what they're expecting from Ron Frenz, and should I try to do what's more popular right now and maybe adapt my style and show them I can be fresh and exciting. And I mean, I used to, during the lean times, I used to fantasize about sending in samples under another name and, you know, and getting work and then having to maintain the facade, you know, that kind of thing. And it's like, oh my God. And I was told, you know, by Tom DeFalco and by other people that I was still in touch with, that, you know, that's a bad idea, because there's also the chance that they will feel used and fooled and not take it well at all. You know, that kind of thing. So, you know, it's one thing to maybe try to show them that you can do something more modern, or you can do something different, or you can do something more specific to the character that they're looking for. But to do it as to fool them is probably not the best way to go. So I never did it. It was never more than a dark fantasy of trying to get work, you know, that kind of thing.
It's interesting, though, because, I mean, given what you've told me about, you know, when you guys were working on the Hercules miniseries, like, it makes sense that you would even have that thought. If someone's like, well, we think we know what Ron Frenz is going to give us, and that's somehow a negative because they want to go in a different direction, they don't think that you can somehow adapt to it, I can understand why you'd be like, well, hold on, if I don't have the name, are you going to feel differently about the work? Because you're prejudging the work because of what I've done before. I'm an artist. I can adapt and do different things.
Oh, I wish more editors understood that. You know, Tom and I talk about that all the time, because, you know, you give us an assignment, give us a page count, give us an assignment, give us a character. And, you know, if you have specifics in what you're looking for, then please tell us. You know, let us work to your specifics if you have specifics. Unfortunately, a lot of editors, a lot of publishers don't have specifics. They just know what they like when they see it. And that becomes very difficult for a freelancer to meet an expectation that has not been stated or defined or exists. You know, I mean, it's very difficult sometimes. That's one of the things we deal with, you know. And it's come up from time to time that it's become up as an issue. You're right. That 3-issue Hercules series was a case where, you know, we had the satisfaction of the editor-in-chief that didn't want to hire us, saw the pages and went, oh, this stuff looks great. Who is it? And the editor was able to say, it's DeFalco Friends. And true to Tom's assessment, he didn't laugh and go, oh, I was wrong. He just kind of grumbled and left. That kind of thing. So, you know, nobody likes to be the butt of the reality, you know, that kind of thing. So. For
sure. Now I'm going to as I've promised, I'm finally going to let you get back to your evening in just a moment. I guess the last question would be, you know, the last time we spoke, you had kind of mentioned that there would be a new story coming. Now we've seen it. It's in the Savage Sword of Conan number 15, which came out today, July 15th. What is there anything coming in the offing, or is there anything that we know that is coming next for you? And is it with Tom, if there is something?
There is not. No. Currently, I don't have anything on the boards for publication. I still have some pages of Blue Baron to finish up for the next issue, but you know, things have kind of slowed down. There seems to be some movement there now, some hopeful movement there now that I'm hoping is leading us towards renewing some more aggressive publication. But we're waiting to hear. But no, we don't have any 10-page deals with Marvel that are in the offing or anything like that, unfortunately. But we're certainly open to it. And, we'll see. If anything happens, I'll be sure to let you know.
For sure.
But mostly I'm just sitting back and doing my commissions and enjoying the hell out of it. And, I just got done doing a couple of shows, the Heroes show down in North Carolina, and I'm going to be doing the Terrificon in a couple of weeks up in Connecticut. And, keeping my hand in. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Well, and again, we should tell people that they should go to Catskill Comics and they should add to your, your lengthy commission list so they can, get something that they want you to draw on your board.
Well, there's still a wait list that I'm chopping away at, but I'm told by happy customers that it's worth the wait. So yes, if you're dying to get a commission from the old man, feel free to contact Scott Kress and get on the wait list, and we'll get to you as quickly as humanly possible.
I was saying,
thank you for that.
I was saying off podcast before that I constantly struggle with what to eventually have you do as a commission, because I have to make sure I do that at some point while the iron is hot. But I also love watching your Facebook and love watching all the commissions and other pieces of artwork that you put up there. And every time I see a really good one, I'm like, oh man, that's another really good idea. Like, trying to differentiate and knowing that eventually it'll end up on your Facebook and people will be like, oh, that's a interesting choice. Why did this person want that? So there's so much anxiety you give me, Ron.
I'm sorry, Adam. That's ridiculous. But I'm always fascinated. I part of it's the Facebook algorithm, but I'm always surprised what does get response and what doesn't. And mostly it's Spider-Man gets the biggest response, which makes a certain amount of sense. I just put up a Star Wars page that got a huge response that I was kind of surprised by. But I did a double-page Thor commission a while back, where it was Thor and Hercules versus the Destroyer on the Rainbow Bridge, and I thought it would get more of a response, and it really didn't. And I was like, and I don't know whether to blame the algorithm or just that I was over anticipating a response if it's Thor or something. I don't know, but it always. I'm always curious about those kinds of things, and I hear the algorithm can be odd, and not everybody is seeing every post and all that kind of stuff, because I haven't monetized or I don't really go into the whole dashboard thing and pay much attention to who's seeing what and how they see it, and I don't what is it? I don't even know the word for it, but you can boost.
Oh yeah,
your
reach, I guess,
all of that. Yeah, I'm not doing any of that. So maybe they occasionally, maybe I fall off of some people's walls every once in a while or something. I really don't know, but it's always fun to interact with fans. If anybody asks a direct question, I usually answer it and enjoy starting conversations and all that. So I mean it's a great way to stay in touch with people that still care that I'm still breathing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have somebody that cares they're breathing.
That's true. Well,
which is why I appreciate coming on Comic Shenanigans.
You brought it full circle. Consummate professional you are.
Anyway, it's always a pleasure, Adam, and I truly do appreciate your interest and what you do as a podcaster, and the fact that you are staying involved in the stuff and asking probing questions and having fascinating conversations with not just me, but but other comics professionals. It's terrific, and good on you.
Well, thank you so much. And again, we still have a lot of your Thor run to cover, so don't worry. You're going to come back many more times, hopefully.
Okay, sir. I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet.